Really tough season for the Nuggets last year. No Jamal Murray, no Michael Porter Jr. And before all the injuries, the Nuggets were considered as a team that were fully capable of taking that next step into becoming a true title contender. But despite all of that, it's really hard to consider last season a total disappointment or failure because Jokic becomes the back-to-back MVP, and they actually managed to get the sixth seed out west, even taking one game off the eventual champion Warriors. I still don't think that Jokic gets the credit that he deserves for getting that team to an actual playoff berth. If you look at the statistics from last season, you're going to notice that Will Barton and Aaron Gordon were by far the Joker's most important teammates. The list of players in league history who could have carted that group to a Western Conference playoff berth and a sixth seed at that is pretty small. So even if, like myself, you would have voted for Joel Embiid for MVP, I don't think anyone with a straight face can say that Jokic wasn't deserving of the MVP. Offseason wise, they lost some reasonably important players, but they either have a replacement already on the roster or they were able to acquire one via trade or free agency. So they do end up losing Will Barton via trade, but they get Contavious Caldwell Pope back, who I actually think at this stage might be a bit better. And I think he's a much better fit for this Denver team. Just stand on the wing and shoot wide open threes off Jokic feeds and play defense. Monte Morris also leaves via that same trade. And he's been really solid for Denver for a really long time as the backup point guard and spot starter. But with the emergence of Bones Highland and the acquisition of Ish Smith, who continues to flourish in his journey to play for every team in the league, I think they're going to be just fine. Bones might even develop into an upgrade on Morris as early as this season, and I think certainly beyond he will. Outside of that, the other losses are just whatever. Facundo Campazzo, Jamichael Green, Boogie Cousins, Bryn Forbes, Austin Rivers. It doesn't matter. None of them really matter that much. The other big acquisition, though, is undoubtedly Bruce Brown, who is really unconventional as a player, but he actually fits really well alongside Jokic. I would even say he fits like a glove alongside Jokic. With the Nets, Brown was used as this athletic 6'5" roll man, center, and defensive specialist. And Jokic is as good as any player I've ever seen at hitting cutters. And even though Jokic has been much improved on the defensive end, I think continuing to surround him with versatile defenders is just going to be the way to go. Brown is going to provide the Nuggets with some Aaron Gordon insurance in case of foul trouble, injury, or in case his play just falls off. But the two biggest acquisitions are hopefully going to be a healthy Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. I think they're going to be back to start the season. I was actually not able to find much news on either of their statuses, so I'm taking the approach that no news is good news here. And the hope for MPJ is that he picks up where he left off relatively with regards to his development journey. And the hope for Jamal Murray is that he is at or around the same level he was before the injury, a guy who, scoring wise at least, is able to go toe to toe with any player in the league. If those two hopes come to fruition, this team is absolutely going to be a title contender, and regardless of their status. 49 and a half wins, take the over. This team won 48 games last season. And even if Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. didn't suit up for this team at all the next season, I still strongly feel that the role players this team added are at least a 2-win improvement, if not more. If they get anything from MPJ and Murray, this team is going to be competing for home court in the first round of the playoffs and maybe even throughout the playoffs. This is a no-brainer. Take the over.